Thanks for tuning into this podcast. If you appreciate the news that Rebel brings you, consider being a part of what makes it possible. You can do so by subscribing to our exclusive content at rebelnewsplus.com. That means get exclusive shows, documentary, behind the scenes, and more. And it's for a cheap price as low as $8 to start. We appreciate your support.
Brand new Prime Minister Mark Carney says the carbon tax is gone. But is it, or is it just hiding? And is the consumer carbon tax really gone for good? I'm Sheila Gunn Reid, and you're watching The Gunn Show. You know, it was quite a performative, theatrical gesture of our new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, when he did the whole Donald Trump executive order business, signing away the life of the carbon tax. He said he was canceling the consumer carbon tax. But did he really do it that day? No. Now, according to Environment Minister or former Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault, the carbon tax isn't gone. It's just been reduced to zero, which means that it could go back up at any point. Look at this.
Well, basically, following a decision by cabinet, the price, the consumer price on pollution will be brought down to zero. So it's a regulatory measure to bring the price to zero.
And don't get it twisted. The Liberals are not getting rid of the carbon tax. What they're doing is hiding it in an upstream heavy emitters tax, which will mean that the cost is passed along to Canadian consumers. However, it will be hidden from Canadian consumers as a line item. You won't be able to see it on your natural gas bill, but it will definitely still be there in the cost of your natural gas bill. Now, all that is to say, it is a win to make the Liberals concede that the carbon tax is unpopular because it makes life more expensive for Canadians. And one of the people leading that charge for years is my guest today. It's Chris Sims of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation to explain exactly what has happened with the consumer carbon tax and what Mark Carney is proposing to do with the industrial heavy emitters carbon tax. Take a listen. So joining me now is good friend of the show and my good personal friend, Chris Sims, the Alberta director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Chris, I wanted to have you on because I think it's no small victory, and I think in large part to the advocacy of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation that the Liberals have committed, I don't want to say to scrapping, but reducing the carbon tax currently to zero. And I want to preface that because the carbon tax is still on the books. They're just reducing the rate to zero. And God only knows what will happen if they ever get reelected. But I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, this is a tricky one, but it is a big victory. And if you don't mind, I'll explain how. So this is a huge victory for normal, everyday working Canadians. Now, yes, we know he's not really getting rid of it. We know that he's just hiding it. Just bear with me for a second, okay? This is a huge win for normal, everyday, hardworking Canadians because we made the godfather of the carbon tax scream uncle. Like this guy. He wrote a 507-page book praising carbon taxes. He's literally the former UN special envoy on this topic, okay? We made that guy admit out loud with his face, well, the carbon tax has to go. And we made him say that he's going to reduce it down to zero immediately. Problem there is that the document actually said April 1st. So that was a bit of a problem there too. But the reason why this is a win for Canadians isn't because it instantaneously is removing the 17 cents per liter of gas and 21 cents per liter of diesel. No, it's because we forced their hand so hard that even the Liberal government has had to say, you know what? This issue is kryptonite. It is radioactive. I'm running away from it. Now, will voters believe them? That's up to them. That is up to individual Canadians to weigh their options and say, do I trust this team is actually going to remove the carbon tax? And in fact, it's more clear cut than that, because Carney has stated clearly that he is going to change the carbon tax. His crowd was laughing at the idea of actually axing this thing. No, he's just going to take it and hide it in the industrial carbon tax. But that is why the Taxpayers Federation was very careful to say, wait a minute, this is a win, because we've made these guys run for the hills.
Yeah, and I hope voters don't cut the Liberals some slack on this issue, because as recently as like 4 months ago and 90 seconds ago, it feels like Stephen Guilbeault and Mark Holland were saying that you were ruining the planet if you dared to take a family road trip in the family minivan. They made it so that you were ruining your bank account if you took a family road trip in the family minivan, because they made it so expensive. They said a carbon tax is the most effective way to stop climate change. And then they're repealing it after spending the last 10 years telling Canadians they were climate murderers if they didn't buckle up and pay this ever escalating inflationary carbon tax on literally being alive in Canada. I think I hope Canadians see past the hypocrisy of it all, because they've been called names for 10 years. The Liberals are not our saviors on this issue. They are buckling under public pressure. And I think those are two different things.
Big time. So the buckling under public pressure is something to celebrate, because the people have said, hell no, I'm not putting up with this anymore. You guys yell uncle. And they made them do it. So that is important, but exactly right. Believing them and looking through the devil in the details, because this thing has got split hooves and horns, okay? This is such a devil in this detail, is super important. I'll go one step further. So at the Taxpayers Federation, fighting this issue for the last several years, I've done countless interviews on mainstream media, including debates with people who fully supported the Liberal government's carbon tax plan. They were in environmental groups, things like that. I was called everything, like a monster. My personal one that really annoys me the most is climate change denier, because words matter. And I can talk to you about this because you understand. Words matter. And the term denier has always been attached to the most hideous thing possible, being a Holocaust denier. Like, I'm sorry for even saying that term out loud because it's so disgusting. And the people who were throwing this at normal everyday Canadians who were saying, hey, the carbon tax costs way too much and it's not actually helping the environment, the people who were using that kind of language on those normal folks should be ashamed of themselves. And a little bit of a pro tip to any politician who's in hot water, who is trying to say we should scrap the carbon tax, don't let people call you that. Stop them and say, you know where that term comes from? I reject your labeling me of that way. So to actually see now these same people, the same crowd, keep in mind, Trudeau said that paying his carbon tax was more important than paying your rent or feeding your kids. He said this. He jetted down to some Up With People conference in Brazil on your dime, burning jet fuel the entire way. And he said this is more important than that. So this is that crowd who is now saying, I'm going to back away from the carbon tax now. Hope you didn't notice the 9 years of hell we just put you through. Okay, this is a big deal. But going forward, now we need to get into the details. What exactly are the Conservatives going to do with the carbon taxes? And what are the Liberals going to do with the carbon taxes? Because those are two hugely different things.
Yeah, let's get into that, because Mark Carney said he's scrapping the consumer carbon tax, which I think is, as you said, words are important. He's scrapping the consumer carbon tax because he doesn't want you to see the carbon tax on your bills as a line item. He doesn't disagree with the carbon tax. He disagrees with you knowing how much the carbon tax is adding to the cost of certain things. Now, it's hidden in the cost of groceries and clothes and the things that you buy that aren't energy. But you can see it in your gas bill. You can see it in your power bill. And that's Mark Carney's problem with the carbon tax, is that you know, and so it's unpopular. So he is proposing to move it upstream, to put it on manufacturing, on what he calls large emitters. Well, now you don't know why your appliances cost more. You just think, oh, things are just going up in price. Well, this is why, is because he added a carbon tax upstream at the steel mill. And that's why your stainless steel appliances are $100 more for your fridge and $150 more for your stove. And why new home construction costs more, and why your new condo costs more, and why your car costs more. These are things that trickle down to the consumer. They're not just going to get eaten by the manufacturer. He just doesn't want you to know why your things cost more money.
Yeah, exactly. The problem for globalist types, of which he is one, and he has said so himself out loud with his face, he's super proud of it. In fact, I can't get over the front cover of this book, okay? Mark Carney's book, Values, for folks who are just listening on the audio, but I do recommend you subscribe so you can watch our video. You can see that it's a picture of planet Earth that we all share with scaffolding around it. So he's literally like, I, Mark Carney, have a plan to fix the entire planet. Wow, buddy. Okay. So to your point on appliances and cars and steel construction for homes, we do use a lot of steel. Steel is a mega industry in Canada, okay? So he was really wrong to say how much steel are you using around here, because it wasn't true. To your point exactly, that is going to be costly. And that's why I kind of got a kick out of his weird photo op that he chose to do at a steel plant. And he looked like, I don't know if you watch Blackadder, but there was a really great line. He's like, you look like you're fitting in as much as a giraffe at a polar bear only golf club.
I said it looked like a woke Ghostbusters reboot, because their helmets were all uncrooked and they just did not know what they were doing. And sorry to interrupt you, but real interesting for him to go to first of all, the steel mill he went to, heavily government subsidized. I think $400 million from one of those accelerator funds for decarbonization from the federal government. So interesting choice there. But, you know, Carney, all of a sudden, he's a defender of the steel industry. 2 weeks ago, he said that nobody uses steel and he's going to defend the steel industry from Trump's tariffs while promising to slap a climate one on there. And I just think, wouldn't you want to make the industry more competitive in a time of tariffs? But instead, he's cutting into their bottom line.
Yeah, big time. And in two ways. So he wants to hide the consumer carbon tax, which is exactly why it was annoying him. Because us uppity peasants were noticing the cost of the carbon tax. And that was the problem. In fact, a lot of global carbon tax cheerleaders recommend heavy-duty industrial carbon taxes, or a cap and trade system, which is just a carbon tax by another name, because us uppity peasants don't become irate voters, to use their term. I think it was the Carbon Tax Center that pointed it out. That's a huge cheerleader for global carbon taxes. So this is a way for politicians to be able to park their obsession with carbon taxes in a safer harbor, because it's harder for us to notice how much we're getting screwed by it. But to your point on the steel plant and what Carney's doing, one, he is going to hide the cost of the consumer carbon tax in the industrial carbon tax and then crank it up. By how much? We don't know, because he's not saying, but we're going to be paying the thing. And exactly to your point, this has been missed by a lot of people. When Carney announced his carbon tax thingamabob in Halifax, he said that whole thing about hiding it. But the key thing there also that he said is he wants carbon tax tariffs. So on our stuff that we bring in to Canada. So it goes something like this. And this is kind of the screenplay for these kind of global thinking people who want planetary carbon taxes. It goes something like this. Everybody should have carbon taxes around the entire planet. And if their voters / people don't want them, tough cookies. Okay, I'm watching my language. Tough cookies. We're going to cause carbon tax tariffs around the world. So it goes something like this. A widget is produced in another country that does not have a carbon tax. That upsets Mark Carney. Like, it offends him. So as Prime Minister, he is going to tariff that object as it comes across the border so that you and I, Canadians, have to pay more for that object. Just imagine doing this while we're in the middle of this, frenzy about fearing tariffs on this side of the border. It was the weirdest thing. Second, and related, so picture US President Donald Trump, okay? He's in the Oval Office, he's on the phone, he's wheeling and dealing, he's trying to get all of these factories and manufacturers and industrialists to move back to America. Make the Rust Belt chrome again, set up in Pennsylvania, set up in Michigan. And then what does Canada do? We impose a massive industrial carbon tax on our producers? Like, those who can pack up and move their stuff south, why would they stick around here? Like, why would they do it? It's bizarre.
Well, and this is what he was talking about when he went to the EU as his first visit. Odd choice. Should have went to Washington. I think most people would agree with that. We're in the middle of tariff mania. Your first trip probably should have been to Washington instead to the place where we probably do 5 or 10% trade with. But this is what they're proposing in the EU. The EU says if you don't have a carbon tax on your goods, that's fine. We'll slap it on the way into the EU, and the EU residents can just pay it for you. And imagine when we do so much trade with the United States, they don't have a carbon tax. I can't imagine they're going to have one anytime soon. Mark Carney will tax it anyway.
This is what blows my mind. And if I can just slip in a little plug, Franco Terrazzano, our federal director and my dear friend with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, he wrote a book on the carbon tax. And I'm just finishing voicing the audiobook for it. So it should be out in April, the first few weeks of April. So in it, so Franco isn't just good on TV. He actually has like a master's degree in economics. He's a super smart cookie. In it, Franco actually gets into this, and he points out, Sheila, like you said, number one, America, the United States, does not have a national carbon tax. In fact, Democratic President Barack Obama backed off of having even a cap and trade system carbon tax. That guy, okay? He said no to having a carbon tax, okay? Joe Biden didn't have a carbon tax. Kamala Harris did not even suggest having one, okay? So yeah, safe bet that Trump isn't planning a national carbon tax for the United States. And exactly to your point, like our biggest trading partner, and by that we mean like billions and billions and billions of dollars crossing that border. So much so that some of our industries are integrated to the point where a car part crosses the border like 18 times before it hits the road, okay? Like the mentality of saying, oh, well, France won't want our Okanagan wines and they're going to tariff it. So we're going to say we should punish ourselves across Canada every day with huge carbon taxes on our own people. You know what? Let the good folks of the European Union get mad at their own leaders for slapping their tariffs on their stuff that they have to buy at their little bougie stores or whatever. That's up to them to figure out, because it's going to be them that is paying more for the stuff. The idea of punishing ourselves here in Canada with a cross-the-board carbon tax on everything, including an industrial carbon tax, is madness. We are absolutely doing this the wrong way right now. We should be at the negotiating table hammering out a new deal so that we don't have a stupid trade tariff war, because tariffs are just trade taxes. That's all they are, okay? If Donald Trump, US President Donald Trump, has a tariff on stuff coming from Canada to the United States, that makes stuff cost more for Americans. If we do retaliatory tariffs, it just makes stuff cost more for us at the store. It's wild. And so we're really hoping that cooler heads prevail here, but shooting ourselves in both feet with carbon tax tariff and a huge industrial carbon tax is dumb, and we should not do that.
Oh, well, and why would you, like, what I find so galling is Canadians didn't vote for Emmanuel Macron's climate policies. So why do we have to inflict them on ourselves? Because Mark Carney wants to be the leader of the anti-Trump cabal in the world, because that's what his little European gas-guzzling tour was all about. He met with Keir Starmer, he met with Macron, trying to rally the anti-Trump troops, and for that, we have to concede our own climate policy to align with the EU. We don't have to do that. If the EU wants to tax the citizens, that's not my problem.
No,
let them.
70% of the world's countries do not have a national carbon tax. 70.
Including China, by the way. Imagine having to climate tariff all the goods coming in from China. You know what that'll do to the dollar store? It'll be more like the $2.50 store.
Wild. Hey, already it's sad seeing that at Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree used to be always $1.25 or $1. Now I'm noticing, I think most stuff is up to $2 now. And I will point out, like, I just go there for fun stuff. Like, I don't require to shop there. I just like doing so because it's fun. But I will point out, and I won't cry, but there are some people who can only shop there. And when you increase the cost of the stuff in that store, like, you are hurting the poorest people in Canada. And it's rough to see that. And so this is where my scalp is crawling right now, Sheila. These stupid trade tariff wars just hurt poor people and working people. And they absolutely need to knock this off, and they need to do things smarter. And this is why artificially increasing the cost of everything through carbon taxes is really, really bad for normal working people. And we have to stop doing it. That's why we were so over the moon thrilled when we heard Pierre Poilievre come out and say, you know what? I'm getting rid of all of this. I'm getting rid of the consumer carbon tax. I'm getting rid of the industrial carbon tax, the whole enchilada, because that does two things. It removes the hidey hole for politicians to shove the cost of the carbon tax into and just screw us with that huge tax. It takes away that cave, that hiding hole. And two, it reduces the cost of everything, because to your point, there's steel for sure. But do you think a fuel refinery is going to be eating the cost? No, it's going to come down through the pump, through the hose, to gasoline and diesel. Same thing goes for natural gas. So we're just going to be in the same pot of boiling water. We just won't be able to see why we got there.
Right. And I was happy to hear Poilievre acknowledge, like, steel is the skeleton of modern society, right? Like, it's so crazy to say, like, what do we even use steel for? I guess you don't see the construction workers in your mansion, Mark Carney, but they're building stuff every day. And that's just one industry. When they talk about heavy emitters, they're talking about agriculture. You know, they're talking about food. They're talking about oil and gas. They're talking about cement and concrete. They're talking about everything.
So what you're saying, Sheila, is that they're only talking about food, warmth, and shelter? Like, that's it?
Yeah, that's it.
That's fine.
it. Just, you know,
that's totally optional.
Alive.
I can give that up. It's fine. Yeah. Everything's fine. Like, here.
I canceled my Disney Plus. I'm going to be fine.
This is metal. This is steel. This has been manufactured. Like, thank you. Like, even simple things like that. This is where it gets frustrating, because we always wind up paying more. Like, the normal average working Canadian always winds up getting screwed. And I think the latest data from the Fraser Institute showed about 48% of our wealth goes to taxes, more so than food and clothing. It is the dumbest thing ever. I will point out, this is where it's frustrating. For someone like Dr. Mark Carney to say something so flippant as, well, we don't really use steel. Okay, number one, I already knew that we used a lot of steel because I've been in the game for a while. Number two, it took me 8 seconds on Google to find out how many people it employs in Canada and how important it was to our GDP. The answer is a lot and very, okay? So the fact that he would say something like that while he has his undergrad in economics from Harvard, he has his PhD from Oxford in economics, like, not basket weaving. So why Is he thinking that we can tax our lifeblood, the production of food and fuel and shelter, and everything's going to be fine for affordability? It's not. It's not going to work. And this is what we really need to drive home for Canadians so they understand this. He's not just some grandfatherly calm dude who can be, the calm person to Trump's, chaos. No, look at what he actually proposes and what he wants to do. He wants to keep more than 80% of oil and gas in the ground. He quotes Bill Gates and Greta Thunberg in this book repeatedly, over and over and over again. Like, carbon taxes are a keystone to his worldview. The idea of him suddenly saying no carbon taxes, it's all totally fine, that is like a vegan ordering a steak. Like, I don't know about you, I'm going to watch him choke that thing down, and then I'm following him out to the parking lot to make sure he doesn't yak it back up. Because I don't believe this. Sorry. I know, are you in Lent? I'm probably making you hungry.
You are.
I'm sorry.
You are indeed. Before I let you go,
Okay. I'm getting bounced because I said yaks on our show.
No, it's because I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry. So hungry. So missing a steak. Before I let you go, and the only reason I'm cutting you off is because I have to host a live stream, right? Like, momentarily. Let us know how we can first get Franco's book and support the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, because you are doing great work. I think you should take responsibility and a victory lap for the cancellation of the consumer carbon tax. This is what an army of motivated people who are in touch with each other can do to put pressure on politicians.
Big time. Thank you for that. And it was our supporters. It's like hundreds of thousands of them have been sending emails and making phone calls and really standing up for themselves for years. And this is why the carbon tax is now radioactive. Franco's book, you can pre-order it. It's on Amazon. It's called The Rise and Fall of the Carbon Tax in Canada, or you can just look up his name. His name says author on it now. If you Google it, it's so cool. So yeah, it's all available on Amazon. The audiobook should be available for pre-order as well pretty soon. So that would be lovely, because it just gives you the whole enchilada when this thing started in 2008, and also the fight ahead. Exactly the stuff I was talking about, the pressure to have global carbon taxes. All of that stuff, because this will not be over, as Rambo said. So go to Amazon and pre-order his book if people can. Second, I would love for people to sign up with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and they can do it for free, okay? Go to taxpayer.com, find a petition that speaks to you, like canceling the gun grab, defunding the CBC, or scrapping all carbon taxes, including hidden carbon taxes, and that makes you part of the army. And so the next time we're going to massively fight something like the carbon tax, you'll be on that list, and you'll be part of our email army and our phone call army. And taxpayer.com, it also, if I may, it lets you know you're not alone. It gives me a sense of fellowship. We reply to all the emails ourselves, and it really builds a community. So it would be lovely for people to join up.
Chris, I just want to thank you so much. And like I said, take this victory lap on the carbon tax, consumer carbon tax, pardon me. You deserved it. You've helped so many, millions of Canadian families with your advocacy and your hard work. And I'm just happy to call you a friend and an ally.
Means a lot to me. And likewise, let's land this plane. Thank you.
We've come to the portion of the show, as always, where I turn the show over to you. This is the comment section where you get to have your say, because without you, there's no Rebel News. So in an effort to stay constantly connected to the people who support us, or even those who don't, because I want to know what they think too, I go looking in the comment section of YouTube and Rumble for what you have to say about our work. Or you can email me directly, Sheila@rebelnews.com. Put Gun Show Letters in the subject line so I know why you're emailing me. And who knows, you might just see your comment, question, concern, or criticism read by me on air. Now, today, it's hate mail time. Or not hate mail, but tone policing time. Somebody who disagreed with my take on, I think, something that is of public interest to Canada. And it comes to us by way of Juno News, who broke the story that Mark Carney's child is transgender, or at least uses they, them pronouns. The child's name is Sasha, and Mark Carney allowed his child, who was a minor at the time, to go to the discredited Tavistock clinic, where now 1,000 plus families are suing the clinic. Now it's closed, for forcing kids who were otherwise mentally ill into the medicalized gender affirming pathway. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, when what they clearly needed was mental health help. And now I don't actually care. As I said in a live stream discussion earlier this week, and this comment comes from the YouTube clip of our live stream discussion, my friend and Lise Merle, Rebel News contributor from Saskatchewan, we were talking about this issue because there's a lot of shut up, don't talk about this is a man's child, it's got nothing to do with politics, coming from the left, definitely, but also the right. And generally, I believe with that stuff. I believe in that. Leave the families out of it. Somebody's family is their own business. Definitely. But his child is a public figure who's 24 now, who has written extensively as an adult about their time at Tavistock and their journey. Sasha's a political activist. That's his child's name now. And so the child has put this in the public. And so you don't just put something in the public and say, now you can't talk about it. You can't talk about this issue that everybody is talking about, that is an international issue, especially given the path the Trump administration is taking on this, banning men from playing against women in women's sports and banning transgenders from the military. So it's a big deal. And Alberta and Saskatchewan are carving a different way on this issue within Confederation. And so here's why I think this is an issue. And you can go find this video where I make this point. It's an issue because it begs multiple questions now. As we know, Mark Carney is terrible at keeping his personal stuff separated from his political stuff. We know this with his problems with conflicts of interest with Brookfield Asset Management. That was the company he used to be the chair of, which he's put his assets in a blind trust, even though his assets were directly impacted by the policy advice he was giving Justin Trudeau for the last 5 years. So he's got a real tough time keeping his personal business out of the political realm. And I want to know if he's going to do the same on this issue. We know that Pierre Poilievre was asked by the mainstream media how many genders he thinks there are. He says 2. Correct answer. Now I want to know what Mark Carney thinks, especially since Mark Carney is the prime minister. I also want to know what he thinks about biological men occupying women's spaces, for example, in their change rooms, in their prisons, in their sports. Does he think that's okay or no? I also want to know how Mark Carney feels about gender transition for minors and to do these things behind the backs of parents. Because in Alberta, we say, no way, Jose. So this is a public policy issue now that I know that this is a personal issue for Mark Carney. We know that DEI programs and the DEI colonization of the developing world by Canada is, I think it's an $11 billion taxpayer bill. That's how much it costs for us to fund gender nonsense in the developing world, let alone to fund it in Canada. We also know that there are DEI targets in the Canadian military, making it go woke and causing a crisis of enlistment, but also retention. We know that the federal government has been funding proxy groups, activist groups, sex activists to fight provincial governments like Alberta and Saskatchewan in court when they make efforts to protect future reproductive choices of minors and parents' rights. So I want to know, given Mark Carney's close personal ties to this issue, how that bodes for Canadian policy going forward, because I reiterate, this guy has a real tough time keeping his personal stuff out of his professional political realm. Will this just be more of the same? Or even worse? So that's why I think this, even though there's a constant shut-uppery around it, why I think it is entirely relevant for the Canadian public to know and now ask questions. And that is my personal questions aside, like what kind of father sends his child to the butchers of the Tavistock Clinic as a minor. I question your judgment as a parent. That's just like a personal thing that it leaves a sour, vomitous taste in my mouth when I think about it. But that's my personal assessment of Mark Carney. But there are policy implications here that we should talk about. Now, we discussed it at length on the live stream, like I said, myself and Lise Merle. And one lady left a lengthy comment criticizing our takes as mothers of girls, as women who have, I think, a right to sex-separated spaces. And many of you know I have a female athlete in my household who plays a contact sport, and she should not be forced to play against competitors who have undergone male puberty for her own safety, but also for fairness, right? So I have a deep personal connection to this, being one of the 50% of the population that happens to be female. But anyway, Sharon writes, ladies, please calm down. I don't like how Carney came to be our prime minister, but I don't see any of it as any of my business what his daughter has done. I just explained why I think it is our business, not what his daughter has done, but what are the policy implications for Canada now that we have a prime minister who has this in his family? And like the point I made in our live stream discussion, it's really actually no surprise that a rich white transatlantic liberal man might have this in his family. In fact, it's expected. I mean, that's why half of Hollywood has trans kids, right? Like, it's the new NDP lawn sign or Democrat lawn sign in your family. It's no surprise. But now that we all know, I want to know what this means for my daughters. Anyways, I don't see it as any of my business what his daughter has done. Actually, I don't, like I said, I don't care about his daughter. I don't even care what his daughter's name is, but his daughter has been very public about this and wears her politics on her sleeve. If she's happier now with herself than she was, then good for her. Okay, but also we know statistics show that often isn't the case. I'm sure as a father, he was trying just to make her happy living on this earth, and apparently becoming a trans person she is now. So be it. None of our business. Again, I just explained for the last 8 minutes why this is our business now. We all need to calm down, I think she means. We know there is only two real genders, male and female, but some people just can't accept it. And yes, there are children who do feel like they were born in the wrong body. I agree that is the case. But do we affirm that on minors? Because kids change their minds all the time. I have a level-headed university daughter who has changed her career path twice in the last year. And she's a very level-headed, cool as a cucumber kind of kid. I think kids who are struggling with this should not have medical interventions done on them, particularly when the medical interventions are forever. Anyways, and yes, there are children who do feel like they were born in the wrong body. So be it. They need love and understanding, not hate. I actually, in the video, expressed nothing but empathy for Mark Carney's child. Let's all try to see things from their side without the holier than thou attitude. Okay. Transgenderism is not going away, but I do agree we need to do more to help the ones who feel this way. Okay, then why are you telling me to be quiet and be more understanding of people who would medically intervene on children? I think that's where we're at on this. And just maybe they will wait until they are old enough to make the decisions about their bodies that they would like. Not maybe. They must wait. They must wait. You can't get a tattoo as a minor. You can't pierce your ears as a minor, but we're giving minors cross-sex hormones? That's crazy town. Mark Carney is a human with feelings just like the rest of us, and I'm sure he thought he was doing the right thing for his daughter at the time. Please try and do better. If being okay with cross-sex hormones being given to minor children means I'm doing better, then I'm going to do much, much worse. Okay? I'm going to be worse then. You can be better. You can be better. While people experiment on children, and I'll be worse. And we'll just see in 10 years who is right. How's that? Well, everybody, that's the show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see everybody back here in the same time, in the same place next week. Thanks for indulging me on the very long last segment on the show. And as I always say, don't let the government tell you that you've had too much to think.